बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. सो डियर स्टूडेंट्स, आज हम इनऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री और अदर बायो इनऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री के इस क्लास में बात करेंगे अबाउट एन इम्पॉर्टेंट टॉपिक दैट इज द कोऑपरेटिविटी इफेक्ट. तो बेसिकली एज यू नो दैट हमारी जो ये पूरी सीरीज है इट हैज बीन स्पेसिफिकली प्रिपेयर्ड for the competitive exams like CSIR-JRF-NET, GATE and other related exams. ठीक. So अभी तक हमने 4-5 lectures clear up किए. Now we have just 2-3 topics behind, so we'll cover up all this post stuff. ठीक है. And in this hemoglobin and myoglobin जो हमने last class में start किया था, in that this is our second heading. Last जो heading थी that was the structure of hemoglobin and myoglobin. Now this is second heading. So class concise होगी, as this is the name of the channel. Class will be concise to the point जहाँ से question आता है and where the most of the time this question have been asked. ठीक. So we'll start the cooperativity effect. Before we'll go the cooperativity effect, we'll just go back that hemoglobin का structure जो है हमने इसके बारे में क्या बोला था, that we have the head that is heme protein. We have that heme group that is your nitrogen, 4 nitrogens where we have 4 pyrrole rings. I will just show them in the shot. So we have 4 pyrrole rings and they are joined together by the methane bridges, and the system is highly conjugated, so they are joined together by the methane bridges. I will not show them now the exact structure to prevent the time and make it a bit easier. So we have the extensive conjugation, let's say something like this. ठीक, वो structure हमने prepare किया है last class में. So this is extensively conjugated, and then at the center it's something like this, and then we have iron at this center. So we remove these hydrogens. Now we have iron at the center. ठीक है. So in the hemoglobin, as we discussed that, there are 4. Now we have chains also, the protein chains attached. ठीक, 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, 2 alpha and 2 beta chains. Alpha chains where we have the number of amino acids 141 in each chain, and in beta we have 146 amino acids in each chain. Whereas in the myoglobin we have this single pyrrole, this tetrapyrrole head. ठीक, so we have a single head. Let me show it like this shortcut. So we have this tetrapyrrole system, heme group. This is our pyrrole head, and then we have a single chain. So in case of myoglobin we have a single chain, and that single chain contains 100 and how many amino acids? 153 amino acids. That's it. So we have here alpha chain 141, 2 alpha chains, 2 beta chains, so we have 146 in the beta chain. While in the myoglobin we have only 153 amino acid, and that's a single chain, single heme group. ठीक, so that is all about the basic structure. Now इसके अलावा जो ये जो hemoglobin है, now let's say there are 4 chains and 4 heads. ठीक, this is one, another, so this is the 4 units. So they are joined together by the hydrogen bonds. So इसका हमने नाम दिया था, it's called as the salt bridge. ठीक, it's called as a salt bridge. ये जो bonding है 2 chains के बीच में, this is your salt bridge. और basically होता क्या है ये salt bridge? एक chain में we have that amine group which is protonated in the form of NH3, and then the other chain we have that COO negative carboxylate ion group. So then we have this ionic force. ठीक, so this is your another chain. This is basically your salt bridge. ठीक है. Now what do you mean by the cooperativity effect? Now this is the structure. तो cooperativity effect में क्या होता है, that ये जो state है, normal state of the hemoglobin or myoglobin. When you say hemoglobin तो write down HB, when we say myoglobin तो write down MB. Fine. तो hemoglobin में normally ये जो iron होता है it's above this ring, so it's like a pyramid structure. Why? Because the size of the iron atom which is normally Fe plus 2. ये दोनों केस में होता है, इसमें भी होता है, and then myoglobin also same. And then Fe2, it is in the state called as it's a high spin complex. ठीक, ये हमने डिस्कस किया है पिछली क्लास में भी. When we say a high spin complex, so then we write down the electronic configuration T2G4 and then Eg. In the Eg set we have 2 electrons. So this is your electronic configuration, high spin complex. So all the electrons, since it's a D6 system, so D6 system, if you want to make T2G Eg, you can show it like this. This is T2G set, where we have 1, 2, 3 electrons. Eg set, we have 2 orbitals, 5, and then 1 will be here 6. So this is T2G4, that's one of the orbitals paired, and then there are 4 unpaired electrons. ठीक, so जो size होता है इस state में, high spin state में atom का, iron का, that size is around 92 picometer. इस पे भी sometimes question आता है. Now, so this is called a deoxygenated state. ठीक, now when the oxygen bind, अच्छा ये जो state होता है where the oxygen is not bound yet, now this is basically called as the tense state. ठीक, so this is called as the T state. So you can write down in this T state, this is the high spin, iron is in the high spin state, and this is the electronic configuration, this is the size. Now when the oxygen binds, remember same is the case with your myoglobin also. ठीक है, so when the oxygen binds with this iron, so what happens, it's not getting the oxidation doesn't occur. Remember this, even though some of the books show oxidation, no, it still remains in the Fe2 state. So after binding with the oxygen, okay, so it's something like this, it is still plus 2, and then this is your oxygen. What happens, the size, it becomes, it converts from high spin to the low spin. When it's low spin, that means ye jo orbitals the, they are getting paired. So now these 2 electrons, they will come here, so it will make T2G6 Eg0. So it will now become T2G6 Eg0 as the electronic configuration. So when it is a high spin, the size, जो आपका size था, of the iron plus 2, that is contracted. ठीक, so when it becomes contracted, उससे क्या होगा? Earlier it was above the ring, now it goes inside the ring. So now it becomes some sort of a planar, close to planarity. ठीक, so the size decreases from 92 to, it goes from this to 75 picometer. As the size reduces, now the size of iron 2 is enough to fit inside the cavity, even though it doesn't fit 100%, but close to the square planar geometry. ठीक है, now we have to assume that when the iron was above it, now that was called as a tense state. Now when the oxygen joins, it goes inside, it's called as the relaxed state. ठीक, so after binding, it's called as the relaxed state. So we say it's an R state, relaxed state. And initially it was called as the T state. So this is what this situation, it's called as the T state, high spin. After binding with oxygen, it becomes low spin complex, it's called as the relaxed state. So relaxed state means that the iron goes inside this cavity. Now we know that each iron, it's attached to that the peptide chain, protein chain, and protein chains are bound together by those bridges. So as one moves inside, so what happens, since it's linked by these salt bridges, they are linked together, so it affects this chain also, and then this simultaneously affects this chain, this affects this chain. उससे क्या होता है, that जो पहला molecule bind हो गया, if we write down the equilibrium, so when the first hemoglobin molecule, it binds with the oxygen, this is a reversible equilibrium we know, क्योंकि ये lungs में इसको pick करते हैं, then inside the tissues they release this oxygen while the pressure is very very low, while in the lungs the pressure is very very high. ठीक, so it's called as FbO2. So we write down this is your equilibrium constant. ठीक, so we can write down this is K1. I see the binding constant. ठीक है, तो we can write down the binding constant as concentration of hemoglobin bound with oxygen, that is oxygenated, divided by the concentrations of hemoglobin and the oxygen. That's your K1. ठीक, तो ये जैसे ही बाइंड हो जाता है इस रिंग के साथ में, दिस बाइंडिंग affects the affinity of the second सब यूनिट, तो उसकी वजह से क्या होता है कि यहां पे ऑक्सीजन मॉलिक्यूल फिर क्विकली बाइंड हो जाता है. सो व्हेन दिस बाइंड्स विद द ऑक्सीजन दैट इन टर्न अफेक्ट्स द एफिनिटी ऑफ द अदर मॉलिक्यूल. सो तीसरे के साथ इट बाइंड्स मोर फास्टर, द एफिनिटी इंक्रीजेस. सो एंड देन अकॉर्डिंगली द फोर्थ मॉलिक्यूल की एफिनिटी ज्यादा होती है. तो इफ यू राइट डाउन दीज एफिनिटीज, राइट डाउन फॉर द सेकंड मॉलिक्यूल, so it like this HbO2, it takes one more oxygen, it forms, it's a reversible equilibrium, so it's HbO2 twice. Likely when third molecule of oxygen joins, forms HbO2 whole 3. So the constant is K3, here it was K2. Then this HbO2 thrice one more oxygen molecule binds with other subunit. So this Hb, it forms HbO2 whole 4. ठीक. So now ये जो constants है K1, likely we can express K2 by concentration of this by this and this, likely. So if we see the affinity K1, that K2 is more than K3 is higher than that, then we have maximum in case of K4. So that means the affinity of oxygen molecule to bind with the hemoglobin increases with every binding of oxygen molecule. So that means first chain के साथ जब bind होगा तो second के साथ affinity more, then third के साथ further increase, then fourth के साथ highest affinity. So these binding constants, they are actually follow this order. This is basically called as the cooperativity. ठीक है. So the phenomena where the binding of one oxygen molecule to one subunit, it enhances the binding of other molecules successively. So this is called as cooperativity effect. And if you want to roughly want to remember the values, K1 it's around 5 to 60 its value, and K4 3000 to 6000. Now you can imagine the value K1 5 to 60 and K4 3000 to 6000. For this much increase in the affinity of oxygen with the hemoglobin. So अब इसमें ये भी याद रखने की चीज़ है कि again we'll go back that so when the hemoglobin, let's say this is the lungs, ठीक, so this is your aerial oxygen, so it only binds under the high pressure conditions to form hemoglobin. See, we show it by this N, ठीक है, and then it moves through the blood, then it deploys it in the tissues or muscle cells. There the pressure is low, so here the pressure is high, so it binds under the high pressure condition, ठीक है, and then here it releases. So once the hemoglobin gets released, it goes back, ठीक, while as the oxygen moves inside the cells, it binds with the myoglobin to form MbO2. So this binds under the low pressure conditions. This is important. So here the pressure is low. So myoglobin binds to the oxygen when the pressure is low, under low pressure conditions inside the cells or tissues, whereas hemoglobin binds to the oxygen in the lungs under the high pressure conditions. So this is all about your basics of cooperativity effect. That simply means that binding of one oxygen molecule with one subunit of hemoglobin, it enhances the affinity for the next molecule to bind with the next subunit, and then the process continues up to the fourth. So K1 is less than K2, then K3, then K4. So this way the affinity increases. So this is all about the basics of the cooperativity effect. जहाँ से questions आता है, remember the size of the ring, sorry, the size of this iron before binding and then after binding with the oxygen, and then T